I closed my eyes in peace. The day I was certain that Chase was having an affair was our 15th wedding anniversary. The message was very short. Your tie is left here with me. I'll bring it to your office tomorrow. Don't keep looking for it everywhere again. The tone was so familiar, as if they were the couple who had endured hardships and joys together and been married for several years. I stared at the message for a long time before saying to Chase, who walked out of the bathroom, "Let's get a divorce. Let's get a divorce. What are you making a fuss about?" Chase frowned, lowered his voice, and his eyes were on our daughter, who was sleeping beside me. I picked up his phone. The light on the screen reflected on Chase's face. After a long time, he said, "Men always have to play along on occasions. What else are you not satisfied with when you manage the company's accounts?" Chase and I started from scratch and established the company. It has only been on the right track in the past 2 years. Even when I stay at home to take care of the child, I still manage Chase's accounts. His money all passes through my hands. He thinks I should not be dissatisfied, even if he and his young and beautiful assistant from another family where I can't see. I should not be dissatisfied. Looking at the red marks on his body that he hadn't had time to cover up, I asked him, "Chase, do you remember what day it is today?" He followed my gaze and hurriedly covered up the marks on his body. After a long time, he pursed his lips and handed me a card and said, "Buy what you like. You know the password." Chase's password is our wedding anniversary. I know. But who has forgotten? This is again a common problem of men. I felt a bitterness in my heart. Holding that card, I kind of wanted to laugh. Feeling that there was nothing more to say to him, I didn't waste my breath. Early the next morning, I took my child and went back to my mother's house. The little girl hadn't woken up yet. Rubbing her eyes, she asked me, "Mom, where are we going?" I had to lie to her. "We are going to Grandma's house for a while. Dad is going on a business trip." Children are easy to deceive, but adults are not. As soon as I entered the door, my mother blocked me in the living room. "You want a divorce?" She was so nervous, as if making this decision would lead me astray in life from now on. "Yes," I said coldly. "That won't do. Where else can you find a husband like Chase if you miss him?" My mother likes Chase the most. She said that a mother-in-law always finds her son-in-law more and more adorable. I couldn't bear to expose her. It seemed that it wasn't her who had stood in the yard with her hands on her hips and scolded Chase as a thief before. She was originally the one who most opposed my relationship with Chase, because she thought Chase's family was poor and would drag me down. Chase and I grew up in Xiaodong village. We played together when we were wearing crockless pants. When we were a little older and playing house, I was always Chase's wife. Later, when other people in the village teased him, "Chase, how about having another little wife?" Chase always said with a serious face, "No. A man can only have one wife." Holding the old photo, I thought, things that we knew when we were young. How come we don't understand them when we grow up? He must be pretending. In the evening, Chase appeared in my family's living room. He smiled gently. "Mom, I've come to take Bunny and them back." My mother took the nutritional products in his hand. Her eyes were smiling like flowers. "Come as you come. Why bring things for Mom?" Chase put his arm around my mother's shoulder and said in a voice loud enough for me to hear, "This is because I hope Mom can help me. Recently, there are 2 more projects in the company. When I'm busy, I live in the company. Bunny is angry with me." My mother immediately glared and gave me a look before saying, "Company affairs are the most important. Bunny won't be so unreasonable. I'll let her go back with you later." Chase's eyes curved. He looked just like that excited teenager when my mother agreed to let him marry me. He turned to me proudly and said loudly, "Thank you, Mom." He acted so well that it gave me an illusion as if nothing had happened between us. But I still saw it. The screen of his phone on the coffee table kept lighting up frequently. The nickname he gave her was Little Darling. The girl on the other side of the screen was Kokithus, saying that she wanted to go to Sonia to take photo shoots and asked Chase to go with her. She said that the last one didn't look good and she didn't like it. She wanted to wear a wedding dress this time. I thought, well, wedding photos. Chase is going to take wedding photos with another woman. I sat on the sofa for a long time, just looking at his screensaver. It was a family photo that we asked our neighbor to take in front of our new house on our daughter's first birthday. Swipe this screen, and inside are our wedding photos. The photo is simple. Standing in front of a white curtain are me in a white wedding dress and Chase in a borrowed suit. On that day, Chase stood beside me and promised me, "Wife, I will definitely make it up to you later. I will make it up every year." He was serious when he said it. And I was serious when I believed it. 10 years passed in a flash. I didn't wait for the wedding photos. I thought he was busy. It turns out it wasn't. He has taken them with others. I can't help but wonder if he would feel guilty towards me for a moment. Or rather, he only feels guilty towards this girl. Guilty that he can't give her a proper wedding photo. Probably not. Chase would only say that it's just a photo. The money is in my hands. The name on the marriage certificate is mine. The person who forms a family with him is me. What am I not satisfied with? What else am I not satisfied with? But I am just not satisfied. I insist on getting a divorce. Seeing that I still wouldn't let go of this matter, Chase rubbed his forehead in pain and asked me, "Donna, are you done yet?" "I won't get a divorce. I won't divorce you," he said resolutely. "Those people outside can't compare with you. Bunny. I'll replace her. Okay?" I know who he is talking about. It's his beautiful female assistant. I met her once. She respectfully called me madam, but could also tidy up the stains on Chase's clothes in front of me. Bunny. She is very sensible, and won't come to make trouble in front of you. I promise you. I'll replace her. You will never see her in the company again. I think that not seeing her in the company is the face he saves for me. I had to blink hard to barely hold back the tears that wanted to fall. I said, "Chase. I don't care about these. Let's get a divorce." Chase seemed to be angered by me. He pointed at the tip of my nose fiercely and asked me, "Donna. Don't be unreasonable. I've given you enough face." I can't help but wonder. Would Chase have treated me like this before? He wouldn't. He was most afraid of me being angry. Whenever I frowned, he would carefully coax me for a long time. So who is this person accusing me by pointing at my nose now? Is it also Chase? No, it's not. Look at those bosses outside. Which one doesn't change people as soon as their business picks up? Have I changed? I haven't. I not only haven't changed, but I also let you manage the accounts. Bunny. He softened his voice and said, "Can't we stop being so sentimental? We are so old. Let's just live well." "How?" I asked stiffly. "Watch you be affectionate with others and do nothing? Watch you bring the smell of others home? Watch you lie and say nothing?" I said, "Chase. Do you want me to live a life all my life? I don't quite understand how we can still live well. And I don't understand even more. Is it that I don't want to live well?" I said, "Chase. You really underestimate me. Too. There are also people who love me deeply. Nothing can separate us anymore." I put the divorce agreement in front of Chase. But he tore it up. He said that even if it took forever, he would not divorce me. I consulted a lawyer and moved out of home first. My daughter is just 4 years old this year, and is still in a state of innocence. I didn't want to tell her too much at first. But one day she suddenly asked me, "Mom, are you going to divorce Dad?" I squatted down and looked into her eyes. For a moment, I couldn't find a reason. There was only silence left in the air. The little girl played with the doll in her hand. After a long time, she put it down and reached out to hug me. She said, "Mom, come on. There is a competition in kindergarten." Before the competition, I always hug the little girl and tell her to come on. She has learned. I was really encouraged. Even if Mom and Dad divorce, we all love you the same. This is the truth. Chase loves our daughter very much. The little girl nodded and then asked me again, can mom be a little happier after divorce? I was stunned on the spot. I pulled the corners of my mouth and said, Mom is not unhappy. The little girl tilted her head and looked at me for a while. Then she took out a photo from her pocket and said, but I have never seen Mom smile like this. She lay on my lap and stretched out her little finger to touch me in that photo and said, Mom, smiling like this is beautiful. Perhaps it was left behind when I was tittying up old photos that day. Counting carefully. I haven't seen this photo for 10 years. That year, we had a puppy love behind our families. My mother was so angry that she wished she could slap Chase whenever she saw him. I had good grades and might become one of the few college students in the small town. My mother was afraid that he would delay me. But I wasn't afraid. On New Year's Day, I smiled and told Chase that I was 18 years old this year, an adult. This wasn't puppy love. That night, the whole village set off firecrackers as if in a competition. In the sky full of fireworks, Chase secretly climbed over my wall and lay down and said to me, Bunny, lower your head. I'll take a photo of you. In those days, cameras were rare things. I looked over curiously and was made to laugh heartily by Chase's funny face. With a click, this photo was taken. I have always remembered the kiss that Chase carefully placed on my forehead that night. He swore by the new year and said that he would love me forever. Now I am playing with this photo and looking at the girl in the photo smiling with the corners of her mouth. As if at that moment I heard the most beautiful love words in the world. What did Chase say? He said that we would spend every new year together from now on. I said, okay. I lowered my head and looked into the little girl's eyes. After thinking for a long time, I still didn't know how to tell her that in fact, I had always been looking at only that one person. Sweetness and pain are both given by one person. After a long time, it's hard to tell whether it's love or hate. Just like I'm not crying, but my eyes are shedding tears. During the days when I lived outside, Chase always called me. At first, he tried to persuade me to go home in a gentle tone. Later, he said that he missed the child and asked me to send the child back. Finally, in exasperation, he said that even if the sky fell, he would not sign the divorce agreement. I didn't have any reaction. I just sent and picked up the child to and from school on time, told her to study hard every morning, and said goodnight to her every evening. Actually, I thought it was not impossible to live like this until I received a call. The person on the phone is my friend. A good friend I haven't seen for many years. Hi, Piggy. The person on the other side of the screen barely raised her hand and smiled at me, but always slipped down because she couldn't control the phone. She pouted and complained. It's so annoying to be sick. I can't even hold a phone. I couldn't smile. In the face of separation, people always want to shed tears. Cheeky looked at me crying and said angrily, it was so hard to find your contact information. Why are you crying on the first meeting after such a long time? She didn't look very well. After saying a few words, a nurse came forward and said that she should rest. Cheeky smiled at her and pleaded to say 2 more words. She really only said 2 sentences. The first sentence is, Donna, I invite you to my funeral. Remember to wear a skirt. The second sentence is, I'm so tired. Falling leaves return to their roots. I have to go back to my hometown. I told her not to talk nonsense. How could a living person hold their own funeral? She just smiled, as if saying 1 more word would consume her vitality. I urged her to get treated well, and said that I would go to see her. But after hanging up the phone, I realized that Cheeky didn't tell me where she was. I couldn't find her. A month later, I received an invitation to her funeral. Location, Xiaodong Village. My friend who grew up with me has returned to her hometown after death, and I have to go home and see her off for the last time. On the day of departure, Chase appeared in front of me. He said, I'll take you there. He said, I'll also go home and have a look. I didn't refuse him. Xiaodong village is the place where we grew up and is our homeland that we can't let go. There is the unextinguishable me forever. I turned to look at Chase and silently added in my heart. And also my favorite 18-year-old. Young man. 3. Chase drove in silence. I felt unusually calm. So I took a nap. In my dream, I returned to 18 years old. That year, I didn't get into college. My mother was so angry that she broke a branch to beat me. I knelt straight in the yard, and didn't want to give in at all. You say, didn't I tell you not to have puppy love? Why are you so disobedient? Why are you so disobedient? My mother shouted at me with a loud voice. And the whip in her hand fell on my back one after another. The rattan is soft. But the force of hitting people is not light. I was in so much pain that I shed tears. Blood beads appeared on my lips. And there was a roaring sound in my ears. Beating children is common in the village. But there are not many people who hit as hard as my mother. So there was a circle of people around my yard, all trying to persuade my mother to stop. The last bit of consciousness was when I couldn't control my body and fell forward. Someone threw himself on my back and took a whip for me. He raised his fair neck. And there were still sweat drops dripping rapidly from his forehead. I heard his voice. He said, "Auntie, hit me. From now on, you can hit me." I was in so much pain that I couldn't even speak. I still remembered to push him, and whispered that it had nothing to do with him. I really felt that it had nothing to do with him. People should be responsible for what they do. I said I could bear it. And I could. Until my mother was so angry that she threw away the rattan and said, "Donna, life is so long. Sooner or later you will regret it." I opened my eyes vaguely from the dream and saw the person in front of me was concentrating on covering me with a blanket. His eyes were serious. As cautious as signing a contract worth tens of millions. For fear of waking me up, I started to feel pain again, different from the pain in the dream. This time it was in my heart. I was so sad that I couldn't speak. Do I regret it? I don't know. In the carriage, only the breathing sounds of the two of us were left. Outside the window was pitch black. I turned my head and looked at the person beside me. He still had such a handsome face. Am I getting old? I asked Chase. He also looked at me carefully. His gaze sliding from my eyebrows and eyes to my lips. His gaze was no different from the way he looked at me on our wedding night. Finally, he smiled and said, "No. Bunny is not old at all." I said softly, "Liar. Answer the phone." Chase's phone was on silent. But the screen kept flashing. The person who was so eager to talk must be that female assistant who is much younger than me. I sighed and looked out of the window, thinking clearly in my heart. Even if I can deceive myself by saying that my face hasn't changed, my heart can't. My heart is like dead wood. Because I love Chase. I opened the car door and got out. Answer the phone. Otherwise, it will ring all night. Since it was summer, the temperature outside the car was not low either. But I still pulled my coat closer and looked up at the not very bright stars in the sky. When I was in the village, I would often climb onto Kiki's roof. Her parents died early, leaving only her and her younger sister. She stubbornly believes that there is a star in the sky that belongs to her family. At this moment, I hope this is true. At least I can still see her. What are you thinking about? Chase came over and put a coat on me. I was a little distracted. My nose was filled with a strong feminine fragrance. With a strong sense of invasion. Just by wearing this clothes, one could feel how intense the interaction between the owner of the clothes and the owner of the perfume was at that time. But I never use perfume. I silently returned the clothes to Chase. I was thinking about Kuchi. At a young age, she went to heaven. But life on earth is bitter. Going to heaven is fine too. The moment Chase took the clothes, his expression changed. He hurriedly explained, "I fired her last month. We accidentally bumped into each other during the handover." I turned my head away faintly. So the perfume was spilled and landed on the clothes. Right? Chase said happily. Yes. You're right. That's exactly what happened. Chase. I looked at his eyes calmly and asked, "Do you believe it yourself?" Such a clumsy excuse. I felt a bit cold and got back into the car. I only left him one sentence. I said, "Chase, you might as well just tell me directly that you hugged her, kissed her, and did all the intimate things. At least you're not lying to me." I realized a long time ago that Chase would lie to me. When was the first time? At that time, I was pregnant with my daughter. Chase hurriedly went home, took a document, and walked out. The company depended on him alone. He was tired, and I felt sorry for him. "I won't be back for dinner tonight." He walked out without stopping. Still, he stopped at the door and hugged me tightly. He said, "I really wish you could come with me. I can't do it alone." I lovingly touched his face. "You've lost weight." Chase pressed against my palm and then leaned closer to me, planting a kiss on my face. He said, "Wife, I'll be back soon." I didn't ask Chase if he was going alone. He himself said that he was going alone and leaving the seat beside him for me. That night Chase didn't come back. He said he was so drunk that he was unconscious and checked into a hotel room and fell asleep. Even the next day, he still called me to explain and asked if I had waited for him. I didn't say that I sat up all night. I didn't say that his phone was off all night. I didn't say that I was very worried. I said it was okay. Because I believe in Chase. Later, there was a secretary by Chase's side. He pressed against my neck and said that he was really too busy. Affectionately, he took me to the company and said that he wished he could take me with him all the time. I still said it was okay. I didn't mind. But she's really beautiful. I rarely acted coquettously and said that I was a little afraid. That day Chase got very angry. He almost shouted and asked me why I didn't believe in myself. I tried my best to explain that I did not believe in myself. It was just that the girl was so beautiful that I was really worried. Finally, he hugged me and gently patted my back. He said, "Bunny, I can't live without you." He said, "You are the most important part of my life." He said, "Even if you don't believe in yourself, you have to believe in me." I said okay. Then the beautiful female secretary by his side became his beautiful little lover in bed. For when Chase returned to the car, he smelled strongly of smoke. I opened half of the window. Chase nervously asked again if he should go down. I said no. No need to do anything else. Useless things. We spent the night in the car. When dawn broke, we were one step closer to Xiaodong village. When the car reached the entrance of the village, the road was too narrow to enter. I told Chase to get off and walk. He said okay. We stood hundreds of meters away from the entrance of the village and didn't go any further. Feeling timid when approaching one's hometown. That's what it means. The road in front of us hasn't changed. There is only this one road to enter the village. The big yellow dog that always lay at the entrance of the village is gone. The stone table where I often sat when I was a child is still there. Chase said softly, "In the past, we did our homework here together." I refuted him. "You copied mine." Chase said yes. He said, "You are a good student." I curved the corners of my eyes. The school days were the happiest days of my life. I have walked on this winding path many times. In the past, when I went to school every day, Chase would wait at the entrance of the village with warm steamed buns. On the way to school, my steps were light because there was my beloved in front. Now Chase is standing beside me, but there is a great distance between us. Like two completely unrelated strangers, time rushes past us, leaving the most familiar strangers. The first person we met was Uncle Huang at the entrance of the village. The big yellow dog was raised by him. I called out, "Uncle Huang." The old man squinted his eyes and looked for a long time before stretching out his trembling hand and saying, "The Zhu family girl is back." He turned to the person beside me and immediately said, "It's the Song family boy." Right. The old man smiled happily. "You too. A golden boy and a jade girl." I said you could last forever. I was a bit at a loss for words to answer the old man. Chase, on the other hand, smoothly continued. Yes. On our wedding day. You drank a lot of wine. That day was happy. I remember. The road at the entrance of the village was blocked by cars. That firecracker sound made my ears ring. When seeing us off, the old man kept muttering that being together is good. It's not easy for children to be together. I helped the old man into the house. I know. Uncle Huang. Being together is not easy. It's really not easy. I went to Kiki's house to make arrangements first. There is no one else in her house. It should be me who goes. But there is someone in the room. The man who is putting on white clothes for her is a man who seems completely out of place in the whole room. I asked him who he was. After a long silence, he said, "Lover." In this way, he is indeed more qualified than me to handle these things. So I stayed in front of the coffin for a while, and talked to Chiki for a while. In front of the coffin there is only a cold jar. Inside which is my friend. I remembered again that year when I got married. Chiki gave me a lot of money. She said, "Bunny, you are a very smart person. I believe you can walk this path well. I wish you happiness." On that day, the remnants of firecrackers were all over the ground. In the fiery fireworks. She walked out step by step. That year when she was admitted to college, I thought she would have a bright future. I thought, and said softly, "Chiki, can you see me? We haven't seen each other for a long time." I said, "I'm wearing a skirt. Although I'm getting old, I should still look passable." The words from youth. It's hard for her to remember for so many years. When Kiki was young, she always sent off the people in the family. At first she would cry, but later she wouldn't. She said to me, "If one day I die, come beautifully in a skirt and don't cry." I wore a skirt and couldn't hold back my tears. It's considered fulfilling half of the promise. I hope she doesn't blame me. Chiki, go to heaven, to the paradise without pain. Chase stood behind me. When we came out, we were both very silent. There are still a few days before Chiki is buried. I am going to stay in the village for 2 days. Chase naturally said that he would stay and accompany me. I stared at him for a while before saying, "Okay. I have known for a long time that in Xiaodong village, I can't refuse Chase." We returned to my mother's house. The yard was filled with big trees. The house had not been lived in for many years and looked dilapidated. Chase and I don't have a house in the village because my mother has always disagreed. She insists that Chase has delayed me. Delayed her daughter with a great future. Even at my wedding, she attended with a cold face. After the wedding, I took Chase and knelt in front of my mother and kowtowed 3 times. I said, "Mom, trust me. I will never regret it." After that day, I changed my clothes and took Chase into the city. I said that we must make a great success and prove it to my mother. He carried me on his back through the difficult winters one by one. He said, "Trust me. I won't let you regret it." At that time, we were young and thought that a lifetime was just 18 years. But a lifetime is much longer than 18 years. For those who can't reach the end, they just can't reach the end. 5. The house is somewhat uninhabitable. Not only is the inside in a mess, but even the windows are broken with big holes and wind is blowing in. Looking at the scene in front of me, I couldn't bear it. I said, "Let's not stay here. Let's go to the town and find a hotel." But Chase didn't move. He stood stiffly in the room. The roof was low and he couldn't even stand straight. I followed his gaze. On the already yellowed wall, there was a photo hanging crookedly. It was of me and him at the age of 18. The girl in the photo is good-looking, and her eyes are full of vitality. Even the rented wedding dress can't block the surging love between the two. I quickly walked up and said, "How did it end up here?" After Chase became prosperous, he personally came to pick up my mother and settle her down in the city. He knelt on the ground, and his shoulders which were much broader than before, carried my future. He said, "Mom, when I say a lifetime, it's a lifetime." He said, "I will let Bunny live a good life." He said, "Mom, trust me. At years. How many 8 years are there in a lifetime? The young children are no longer young. And the stubborn parents are no longer stubborn." My mother looked at me standing beside Chase inside. She stepped forward and helped Chase up. From that day on, she liked Chase the most. Trust Chase the most. I know that she hopes Chase will be better to me. I just don't know that in such a long time. In those days when I vowed to make a great success and show her that the path I chose was right. My mother printed out the simple wedding photo and put it by her bedside. At this moment, I suddenly realized that for so many years, my mother didn't think I chose wrongly. She just thought it wasn't worth it for me. For her daughter, she thought it wasn't worth it. The old photo in my hand that feels light is my mother's heavy love. I burst into tears. Chase came over and put his arm around my shoulder. His eyes were also red. He said, "Bunny, after we go back, we'll take new photos. It should have been given to you long ago. It's my fault." I looked at that photo and said slowly, "Your assistant said she wants to take couple portraits in Sonia. Did you agree?" Chase was silent for a moment before saying, "I will refuse her. That is to say, before this." He agreed. When he was desperately trying to persuade me to return to the family, he agreed to the young assistant that he could go to a place we had never been to together, and take photos we had never taken before. In these years, who did he give what he owed me to? Chase. My mother told me in this yard back then, said that a lifetime is very long, and I will definitely regret it. I tightly held the photo in my hand, as if this way I could see Chase back then again. But the person in front of me is not the person from that time. That Chase is not here at this moment. Between us, there is no going back. So I heard my own voice, spanning several years and coming to today. I said, "Chase, I regret it so much. I regret it so much." Chase stretched out his hand, flustered like wanting to wipe my tears. "Bunny, it's my fault. Bunny, it's my fault. Obviously I am the one who is sad." Why are Chase's tears flowing even more fiercely? I deceive myself and say this is true. But if Chase who is crying at this moment is true, then what about Chase who slept in the female assistant's bed before? Is that also true? Chase who said trust me, and we will be together forever, and Chase who said don't be unreasonable and don't be sentimental. Which one is true? Chase who said he will make up the best wedding photo for you later, and Chase who has forgotten this promise for decades. Which one is true? I can't tell. I can't tell. A long time ago, I said, "Chase, I can't watch you be affectionate with others. I can't pretend to know nothing and welcome you home. I can't see you with the face you had when you loved me and play along with others." I said, "Chase, we are different. Even if the whole world tacitly agrees that having a stable family at home, while having affairs outside is the norm of the world, I am different. I am just different." Chase looked at me crying, as if he was really sad. He said, "We are the same. Bunny. We are the same." He kept repeating that he was wrong, that we should start over, and that he would definitely change. I just shook my head. Tears dropped one by one on the photo frame, blurring the young and beautiful face, so that it couldn't be seen clearly. I heard a distant voice, coming across decades. He said, "Bunny, I will be good to you all my life." He said, "Wife, let's take the best wedding photos." He said, "Trust me, Bunny. You are the most important part of my life." He said, "Donna, what on earth are you making a fuss about?" He said, "Donna, why are you different?" I think Chase will never understand why we are different. Otherwise he wouldn't abandon me so easily. It was he who left me. Chase diddied up the house all by himself, and even found something to patch up the window. With swollen eyes, he smiled at me and said it would do for living. I nodded. Actually, it was livable. In the early years after leaving home, we had endured hardships. We saved on water and electricity bills and lived frugally. We didn't dare to spend an extra penny. In such a cold winter, we didn't even dare to buy an extra quilt for ourselves. I felt sorry for Chase. I bought steamed buns and mantiou. I said I wanted to eat mantiou and handed him a steamed bun. He nodded and said yes. After he finished eating, I took a bite and only then found that the steamed bun I had handed him was back in my hand. In those days when we let the other person eat every bite of meat first, we truly loved each other. One day, I couldn't move when I saw the roasted sweet potatoes by the roadside. I was so hungry that I wanted to have a bite. But we had no money. If we ate this roasted sweet potato, we would be hungry for a whole day the next day. It wasn't worth it. Chase didn't care about that. He quickly ran over and bought the biggest one, held it in his arms and ran towards me. When he reached me, the roasted sweet potato was still warm. I always remember that roasted sweet potato. It is the sweetest roasted sweet potato I have ever eaten in my life. Chase watched me eat with relish and somehow became sad. He said, "Bunny, you have suffered. In the future when life gets better, I will give you a lot of money." And he did. In many years to come, I was in charge of Chase's money. We did get better and better. The house got bigger and bigger. Our food and clothing got better and better. And people got busier and busier. I haven't experienced that warm embrace like fire for a long time. Now it seems that we are living the old days again. I teased Chase. President Song should just recall the past hardships and think about the present sweetness. Chase didn't respond to my joke. He said, "In the days with you, I never felt it was hard. As we couldn't cook at night, we strolled to Aunt Wang's to buy steamed buns. Aunt Wang was also very excited to see us. She said we had made great progress over the years and she was proud of us." The old lady looked at us for a long time before she patted my hand affectionately and said, "Good child. You didn't misjudge people," she said loudly. "I said at that time that you and the song boy could live a good life. Your mother didn't believe it. Look, what did I say?" Auntie insisted on not taking our money. I quietly put it on her table, and then pulled Chase and walked out. The old lady packed a lot at once. Finally, she chased after us and shouted, "Children, live well. Live well." At her age, the old lady hopes that the children will live in peace. We agreed and then left. We will live well. We will live well even alone. After we went back, Chase talked a bit more. He diligently tittied up the table. "You always like Aunt Wang's dry food the most. After entering the city, you always mentioned it." I smiled. "Well, I don't like bean buns so much, but I can eat 3 of the ones she makes at one go. When I was a child, when I was tired from playing, I would go to the neighbors' houses to eat. Then at night, my mother would drag me by the ear to settle the bills everywhere. Everyone would say it was okay with a smile. They really watched me grow up. Not only them, but also the brook in the mountain stream, the big trees on the back mountain, and the large tracts of rape flower fields. They all watched me grow up. Watched me love Chase." The light above my head swayed, casting such a gentle light on the person in front of me. Chase's hands were constantly doing housework. He hadn't done it for many years and he seemed a bit clumsy. But when he sat in front of me, he still smiled with a bit of eagerness. He rummaged through the bag and smiled at me in surprise. "There is a steamed bun with sugar." Steamed bun with sugar. A long time ago, during the spring festival, Chase would risk being scolded by my mother if caught and climb over the wall. When he accompanied me to watch fireworks, there would always be a steamed bun with sugar hidden in his arms. He said, "Bunny, after eating a steamed bun with sugar, you will be sweet for a whole year." So every year I stubbornly waited for that steamed bun with sugar. Only with it could my life be sweet and smooth. Then one year during the new year, I didn't receive my steamed bun with sugar. Chase said he was busy. I said I knew. "I know. Love is false. To this day, I still firmly believe that that steamed bun with sugar will make my life better. Because without it, I am bitter inside. I didn't take that steamed bun with sugar. I chose something else to eat. Chase didn't say anything. We ate a silent dinner. Exhausted from the journey, I couldn't eat much. Chase asked nervously if I was feeling unwell. I looked at him and thought, when was the last time Chase scared about whether I had enough to eat? Why can some people share hardships but not joys? I can't eat looking at you. This is the truth. Looking at Chase. I always think of Chase. Someone is right in front of you, but he is no longer the person you miss. 7 Perhaps those words hurt Chase's heart. After tidying up the table, he went to sit in the yard and sat there until late at night. When he came back, he brought a bit of cold air. He said, "It's raining." I nodded and told him to go to bed early. After a while, he said, "It will be a bit cold at night." I looked at the 2 quilts found on the bed and said, "It won't be cold." He didn't give up and said, I think it will be cold." Chase. I interrupted his clumsy excuse. "After we go back. Let's go through the formalities." His face turned pale in an instant, as if he had never expected me to bring up this matter at such a time. He also knows that Xiaodong village is different. Here lies our souls. The souls in love. "Bunny, can we discuss it again?" I shook my head and said, "No more discussion." I looked up at him and said, "Chase, I gave you a chance. On our daughter's birthday a year ago, you cut the cake and were about to leave. I said don't go. But you still went. What did you go for?" Chase lowered his head and hesitated. I sighed and said to him, "Today. Chase, can I still hear a word of truth from you?" Chase gritted his teeth and said, "She was sick. With a high fever. She asked me to go to the hospital to see her." I nodded and said, "I will have custody of the child." "Bunny." Chase raised his voice and then lowered his head dejectedly. He said, "Don't take the child away." He came up and took my hand. "Bunny, can we not get divorced?" This is the first time Chase has asked me. "Can we not get divorced?" "No. Go to sleep." I turned over and lay on my back, listening to the wind outside the window. Although it was summer, the evening breeze still brought a slight chill through the ridge. But the familiar environment made me feel at ease. The old days suddenly rushed into my memory. I had a dream. In my dream, at the age of 18, I was wearing a red dress and running down from the high hillside, then suddenly throwing myself into Chase's embrace. He insisted on carrying me home, saying he was afraid that I would be scratched by the wheat ears. I kept making a fuss and asked him if he would change. The sun in the sky was silent, and the clouds were also silent. I clearly heard the clear voice of the young man. He said, "I will never change." I also shed tears in my dream. Liar. Chase is really a complete liar. I don't know whose family has a happy event. Firecrackers were set off before dawn. The crackling sound was filled with joy. When I opened my eyes, I was a little dazed. It seemed that this was still a certain new year. After a while, Chase would pop up from under the window and smile at me with bright eyes. He had a warm steamed bun filled with sugar in his arms. He would say to me, "Bunny, eating a sugar bun will make you sweet for a whole year." Then the New Year's bell rang, and we welcomed a new year. "Bunny." Chase suddenly spoke, his voice with a hint of crying. He said, "Can't we start over?" My mind was a little confused. I wondered what he meant by starting over. Where to start over? How to start over? My so passionate emotions, so sincere love, and the time that I am so reluctant to forget. How can we start over? I can't do it. So I didn't speak. After a while, there was a little warmth behind me. I realized belatedly that Chase was crying. I tightly closed my eyes and said to him, "Chase, on the night when you insisted on going to her side, my tears had already run out. I had also shed tears. I had also been heartbroken. I had also struggled and asked him if he could come home. In this way, we can start over. Tears can't bring back someone who is determined to leave. I understood this long ago. It's not too late for Chase to understand now. We have long gone in opposite directions and can never turn back. I was going to go to school to have a look the next day. Chase still silently followed behind me. Walking through the path, I saw the small hill in my dream from a distance. Chase also raised his head and looked over, following my gaze, and saw a bamboo forest. That was when business was just picking up that year. Chase took me back to Xiaodong village excitedly. He insisted on planting this bamboo forest. He said that this is the witness of our love. Several years have passed. The originally crooked bamboos have already grown into a dense forest. Things are the same, but people have changed. I didn't go up the mountain. I just walked forward quickly. Ahead was the family having a happy event. The firecrackers from last night formed a bright red carpet. As if walking through this Red Sea, one can usher in a happy life. Chase and I stood on this road again, looking at the once happy ending that also belonged to us. Chase's eyes were red. He came forward to hold my hand. I understood. He wanted to walk this path again. I didn't hold his hand. There's no need to hold hands that have been let go. Let's go our separate ways. From a distance, I saw the school we once attended. Over the years, having made money, Chase funded the renovation of the school. The bright red roof, the brightly lit classrooms, and the sound of loud reading resounded through the sky. Looking out from the window, there were large expanses of red flower fields. The brightness made me dizzy. Chase was pulled by the school principal, and said simple words about returning home gloriously. I bent over and ran along the path to see that red flower field. I closed my eyes and seemed to still see the girl with red cheeks running down from the hill. She was panting and her eyes were bright. She said she had been waiting for a long time. After waiting for a long time, she finally waited for her beloved. The 18-year-old boy curled the corner of his mouth and took out a golden sunflower from behind. He said sorry and said that he would never let her wait again. I opened my eyes. A shadow fell on top of my head. Chase's hand covered my eyes. He said, "It's too dazzling. Open your eyes later." I closed my eyes. But tears couldn't be controlled and slid down from the corners of my eyes. I kind of wanted to ask that girl in the red dress. If she had known that she would wait for so many days and nights, would she still accept that bouquet of sunflowers back then? Would she? When I went back, I couldn't help but turn around and take a look. In the large expanses of red flower fields, it seemed that there was still that boy holding a sunflower. He smiled at me, with the brightest galaxy in his eyes. He said, "I love you the most." He said, "Don't look back." Achiki was buried under the locust tree. She liked. She said there was no need to pay respects as it would ruin the feng shui of this tree. So I recited her name from a distance far from the locust tree, and burned a lot of paper money for her. I said that if she didn't receive it, she could come to me in my dream again. She never came. So I took it as if she had received it. On the way back, Chase didn't speak for a long time. I was also happy to have some peace. The scenes around me kept changing, like an old movie presented by old times. It made people want to cry, until we reached the door of the house. He said the first sentence along the way. "Bunny. Are we?" At this point, I looked at him crying with his head down, as if he had been abandoned by his beloved. He said, "Bunny. I will really change. I can't live without you." I still leaned forward, stretched out my hand and gently patted him. I said, "Chase. 15 years. Counting from the year when we got married against the disapproving gazes of everyone, until today. It has been exactly 15 years. I said, "Chase. I really loved you." He cried and said, "I know. It's my fault." I smiled. As I smiled, tears flowed out. "Chase. You have to remember that you owe me." I said this. We walked on that road full of thorns to today with blood and tears. It was he who abandoned me. It was his fault. He seemed to see hope. He said, "I will change. I will change from now on." Bunny. Chase. Forget it. We really loved each other at the age of 18. And it is also true that Chase's heart is no longer with me now. Everything cannot be forced. Then don't force it anymore. I went to my mother's place to pick up my daughter. The little girl was steadily playing with the jigsaw puzzle in her hand. When she saw us, she even sweetly ran over and gave each of us a hug. My mother smiled and said, "You're back." Then she called the nanny to take my daughter out to play. After that, she came forward and gave Chase a hard punch. "Mom." I started to stop her, but fell silent when I saw her face clearly. "Mom, it's my fault." Chase apologized and said he would give most of his property to me. My mother asked him with red eyes, "What did you say when you knelt in front of me?" She said in a hoarse voice, "You said you would treat my daughter well. You said you would be good to her. You said you would never change. Did you do it?" At this moment, I understand that the temperature that burns people more than fire is a mother's tears. It stings my soul. Chase was driven out by my mother. I stood in silence, waiting for her to turn around and scold me. But the long silence made me look up involuntarily. The old lady stood by the window, trembling slightly and wiping her eyes. "Mom, why are you still crying?" I went up and put my hand on her shoulder, and comforted her by saying that I was fine. She turned to look at me and said after a long time, "Poor my daughter. Oh, this bastard." She didn't ask me if I regretted it or say that I was ignorant and disobedient. She just kept muttering and saying that Chase is an unforgivable bastard. I think my mother is no longer young and can't chase me all over the yard and accuse me of making a wrong decision. She just shed tears and said, "What am I going to do in the future? What am I going to do?" I patted her on the back and shed tears. I said, "Mom, I've worried you. I'm really sorry for making you worry." Chase gave most of his property to me. He said he had changed his assistant, and now it's a young guy. I didn't reply. A little girl asked me if she could still see her dad in the future. I said, "Of course you can. If you miss him, call him." She nodded and contentedly called her dad to ask for the latest doll. On the day of divorce, I wore a red dress that I hadn't worn for many years. Chase was stunned for a while before reaching out to help me get out of the car. "Beautiful." He managed to utter this word after a long time. I smiled and raised my head. Of course. I married him beautifully. And naturally I should also welcome a new life beautifully. No one can't live without anyone else. 9. I have been working for Chase all these years. Once divorced, I have become a sought-after candidate in the market. Chase still hopes that I will stay by his side and work. I refused. I said, "I won't affect your romantic luck." He smiled bitterly and said that he really dismissed me. I didn't take it seriously. If this one is dismissed, there will be the next one. If not an assistant, it can also be a subordinate. Countless people and countless relationships have nothing to do with me anymore. We will all have new encounters. I stayed with the little girl at home for a while. Although the child is still young, I don't want her to feel that she has lost a part of love. It wasn't until she asked me with a difficult expression that a classmate's father in her kindergarten had just divorced and asked if I wanted to meet him. It turns out that she thinks I am the one who needs comfort. After I refused, the little girl said deeply, "Mom, don't worry about me. I know that I have a lot of love." I am very gratified. I went to work the next day. The new company is opened by a long-term partner. I do my original job and it's still quite handy. Chase was in chaos for a while, and said there was a problem with his company's accounts. The partner smiled and asked me if I had done something to Chase's company. I said of course not. I am an open and above-board gentleman. But there are always villains. I called Chase and asked if he needed my help. Chase on the other end of the phone seemed to have not slept for several nights and his voice was hoarse beyond recognition. He said. Bunny, I'm sorry for you. I deeply agree. There is still my share in the company. If he goes bankrupt, I will lose a lot. So I said to him, Chase, come on. He chuckled softly. I don't know if he was encouraged. Later I heard from others that his beautiful female assistant embezzled part of the public funds. The person sighed and said, if Bunny was still by his side. He didn't say the rest of the words. I thought carefully. If we were still together, would I help him? Probably not. I would hate him for dragging me down. Hate him for betraying me. And then curse him to never recover. But Chase will not be unable to recover. I have always known that. 2 months later, Chase called me. First, he congratulated me on my promotion. I said thank you politely. Second, he said he wanted to take the child out to play. I said okay. Then we met again after a long time. In fact, Chase has been making video calls with his daughter. When they communicate, I don't disturb them. Children need their fathers. I also know this. He stood at the door and greeted me, and said it had been a long time. I invited him to come in and wait. He refused. He said, Bunny, I can't go in. It's not that he won't go in, but that he can't go in. I know he's not talking about this door. So I didn't speak anymore. A nanny is still changing clothes for the little girl. I looked at Chase's expression and said, Chase, take care of yourself. A glimmer of joy flashed in his eyes. Bunny, are you worried about me? I smiled and waved my hand and said, you still have to support the company. I'm worried about my money. This is the truth. And there is also child support. Chase has to be healthy and be a money-making machine. He said with a wry smile. You are not willing to lie to me. I raised my eyebrows and stabbed his heart. I've been lied to so much that I don't want to lie to others anymore. Seeing him frown and show a somewhat painful expression, I lowered my head and didn't look at him anymore. I turned around and told my daughter to be safe. The little girl waved at me obediently and said she would come back early. Looking at her, I thought that not all these years are regrets. There are still good times. 10 in the evening. A little girl chattered to me a lot, full of energy as if it could never be used up. Then before going to bed, she twisted her hands and said to me, Mom, I have something I want to tell you. I smiled and tucked in the corner of her quilt before saying, say it. I'm listening. She struggled for a long time before sighing and saying, Dad asked me to speak well of him and said he wants to make up with you. I touched her forehead and asked her what she thought. The little girl said loudly, the kindergarten teacher said that it is very shameful to ask children for help. Perhaps the kindergarten teacher taught them anti-trafficking courses. The little girl firmly remembered it. I wanted to laugh a little. Still, I answered her seriously. Baby, Mom and Dad are not suitable to be together anymore. Mom is very sorry for the harm caused to you. But baby, you will understand later. Mom has done a very brave thing. The little girl also imitated me and touched my head and said, it's okay, Mom. I don't feel hurt. She said. I told Dad, do your own things by yourself. I don't want to care about your affairs. The little girl was a bit sleepy. She added vaguely, I love you both very much. I kissed her cheek and gently turned off her bedside lamp. After coming out, I called Chase and warned him not to say such things to my daughter again. He was silent for a long time before saying self-deprecating lie. Bunny, I have no other way. Right? I know a little bit. My mom will never see Chase again. Sometimes I really admire her. Overnight, she seems to have become the person who extremely dislikes Chase again. When walking on the road that Chase has walked on, she will curse and say it's really unlucky. Chase, why can't you see the situation clearly? Chase said helplessly. What situation? I hung up the phone helplessly and felt that we had nothing in common. Time passed quickly. My mom was eager for me to meet new people again. I had a headache every day when I answered her calls. After saying for the 100th time that I just wanted to focus on my work. My mom was silent. Mom. I'm sorry for making you worry. At the age of 18. I could tell her not to worry. At the age of 34. I can tell her I'm sorry. I think I have made some progress. Sure enough. She never introduced anyone to me again. I got a moment of peace. Chase always her asked me. Either sending flowers, or delivering meals. I gave the flowers to my beautiful female assistant. And I ate the meals. Otherwise, it would be a waste. Finally, he even wanted to cooperate on a project with our company. At the end of the year, I was extremely busy and dizzy. I was so angry that I cursed. Finally, my partner was frightened and said he would never see him again. Then I angrily found someone else to scold. Chase answered my call very quickly, as if waiting for me to scold him. He listened quietly and finally said, "Bunny, I miss you very much. I was so disgusted that I almost vomited last night's meal." Chase. Aren't you cheap? The moment I said those words, I regretted it. I shouldn't have said such harsh words. Chase didn't mind. He said, "Bunny, did you receive my flowers?" I looked at that bunch of golden sunflowers and tightly closed my mouth to hold back the swear words. "Chase," I said calmly, "you still underestimate me." I took that bunch of flowers and threw it into the trash can. Chase just doesn't understand. The past is the past. Or he understands but he doesn't admit it. See how false men are. After the busy end of the year, it was the new year. I took my daughter to my mom's house for the new year. The old lady excitedly made 2 big basins of dumplings, and was about to put them in the pot, when someone knocked on the door. I opened the door and saw Chase, who looked a bit awkward. I sighed in my heart. Chase is so cunning. He smiled embarrassed lie. My mom came over with a knife in her hand, looking as if she was about to throw the knife at him. I urgently stopped her. The little girl was watching cartoons with wide eyes and didn't notice the undercurrents here at all. I still let him in. Leave after eating. He agreed and looked really innocent. In the next hour, my mom almost broke the spatula just to send Chase away as soon as possible. I watched and laughed. Still, I quickly helped her. An hour later, Chase was sent out by me under my mom's glaring eyes. The little girl waved at him from the window and then ran back into the room neatly and continued to watch her cartoons. Chase smiled helplessly. As soon as night fell, someone couldn't wait to set off fireworks. In the sky full of fireworks, Chase took out a candy bag from his arms again. He said, "Bunny, eat this and be sweet for the whole year." He looked at me with burning eyes as if nothing had changed. I suddenly understood why Chase appeared here today. He wanted to make up. I owe you too much these years. Too much. I pursed my lips and smiled and said to him, "Chase, I'm long past the age of eating candy. And I haven't loved the 18-year-old young man for a long time." I pointed at that candy bag and said, "Even without it, I will have a good new year. When I wanted it but didn't get it. I don't need to get it now. Don't come again. Don't see each other again." The gorgeous fireworks bloomed in my dread. I waved at Chase standing in the courtyard. "Go back. It's a new year. Forget the past that can't be returned. In the days to come, we will all live well. I will never look back." Epilogue. Recently, the little girl is fascinated by the dessert shop at the door. I went to see it. The owner is a very gentle woman. The 2 children play well. And we get to know each other a little bit after coming and going. Looking at her and her husband, I am always a little envious. "Bunny, don't you consider finding another one?" I pinched the coffee cup in my hand and looked at my daughter in the distance and said with a smile, "Not currently. I just hope to raise my daughter." I thought for a while and said, "Not everyone has your courage." A bow. Tina sat opposite me. The sunlight set off her gentle face. She said, "Yes. I met a very good person. Bunny, if you have any difficulties, you can tell me." I said definitely. In the distance, Tina's husband was playing happily with the two children. Taking the opportunity, he would wave at her and say that they were having a great time. I received a call and said sorry to the little girl. I asked her if she wanted to stay here or go home. She thought for a few seconds and said she wouldn't leave. So I entrusted her to Tina and her husband and said I would pick her up at night. There are always problems when rushing on the road. For example, I collided with a novice driver who just started driving. I'm really sorry. So sorry. Report it to the insurance company. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The young man repeatedly apologized. I sighed and thought I was unlucky in my heart. I didn't know that for a long time in the future, I would be unlucky. Because his name is May.